Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
And this is it, the midweek version of Fiber Talk, that twice weekly podcast for people who play with needles, thread, and ground cloth.
I like that one.
Yeah, that was kind of slick. Had a marketing feel to it. Yes,
it is. It is. Although today I'm playing with wire too, so we'll add that little fanciness right in
there. Yeah. Actually, I had something, but talk about that now. You've been, because we recorded, coming up in 2 weeks, we have Celeste Chalasani, and she's the instructor for the course you're taking,
Correct.
The stumpwork course. And so it's really a great conversation, and to be able to speak with the instructor was neat. But how is that going? Are you feeling more confident?
It's great. It's great. So what I'm working on right now is there's two poppies in the piece, and the poppies, all the petals except for one, are wired slips. So instead of surface stitching on the cloth, you're stitching things that then get cut out and get wired into place. So I think I needed 9 petals, which are kind of sort of almost the same. So that it was actually the perfect beginner piece, because you just it's a very repetitive thing. You're making 9 of exactly the same thing. So the way it goes, the wired slip, Celeste will talk more about this, about how this particular technique is new, as opposed to the original stump work, which wasn't even called stump work back in the day when it was done in England. But anyway, the gist of it is you start with your ground cloth, which in this case is just a plain muslin for me. And I doubled it up because it's not the thickest, heaviest muslin. So you use that, and then you just couch a wire down on a shape that you've drawn on your cloth. And then you buttonhole stitch around the whole edge so that you can't even see the wire because the stitches are so close together. And then you fill in the space, which is the flower petal, with long and short stitch, just to blend it. So, I mean, you could do plain, you could do all kinds of things, but they do insect wings, you could do flower petals, leaves, anything that you can think of that's sort of three-dimensional or flat-ish, but that you want to be standing up off of your piece. So how has it been? It's been fine. I think, surprisingly enough, I thought the long and short stitch was going to be the hardest part, and that really isn't. What's really hard is to get your buttonhole stitch perfect for the entire way around the petal, because there's always going to be one that just doesn't line up or it catches or something. So there's a lot of imperfect buttonhole stitch going on here. And then there's 1 or 2 where I was like, yeah, I nailed that one.
But that in talking to you about it seems to me that's the critical, actually you said it, that's the critical thing. That's your foundation. And if you do that really well, the rest of it just kind of flows from that without a great deal of difficulty.
Yes, if you look at any kind of wired slips, or if you look at any stump work, the edge of the piece is that buttonhole stitch around wire. And if it is done perfectly, you don't notice it because, it's just a perfect border. And if you do it imperfectly, suddenly you see it because it's not so great. So there's a lot of these. I said, before I should make 12 and then just pick the best 9, which I may still do if it depends on my level of need for perfection. But again, it's the first piece I've done. It's really it's the first surface embroidery. It's the first stump work, and it's the first needle painting all together in one piece. So I'm inclined to just leave it imperfect, as the best I could do, because then I know that the next one is going to be much better, and it'll be really nice to be able to look at the next one and say, wow, that doesn't look as bad as the first one you did.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about that, because, we've talked many times already about learning from these pieces and the psychology of it. And I was thinking that in that particular instance, to make 9 different ones and then to line them up and say, and identify, I don't like this about that one, and I don't like this about that one. This one is pretty close to perfect. That you can really kind of put together your own little constructive criticism, if you will,
Yes.
of what what it is. Yeah, here I didn't have the buttonholes. This was my first one. The buttonhole stitch was all over the road, so therefore everything else is all over the road. And
Right.
then this one I nailed the buttonhole stitch, and so then everything came together. And I mean, I could see lining those all up, and taking a picture, and then making notes on there.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is like, as you go, you're figuring out, right, how close to the wire do I stitch on the inside? How close to the wire do I stitch on the outside to make it easier to cut? And it's just really practice. It's just sort of getting a feel for it because, there's only so much you can learn from instructive books and from classes, and the class is actually excellent. But until you stitch it, you don't really know, right?
Right.
So it's really just a matter of trial and error with this, of like, okay, this one I'm going to try, stitching really close on the inside and not as close on the outside, and then vice versa. And you see what works and what doesn't work. And then after a while, I mean, I can imagine, 6 months from now, if I continued to do stump work pieces, by then I would hope that the buttonhole stitch would be pretty darn perfect because I would be used to doing it. And it's little things like, not using as long of lengths of silk as I would normally because it's rubbing against the wire and it can fray.
Yeah.
More than it would normally if you're just going through it. And that you wouldn't know until you do it and say, wow, this isn't working out so well. Next time I'm going to use shorter thread. So, I think you sort of build your own box of tips.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, that's exactly what I was shooting for, is that if you lay these things out, that you can exactly that. And then the next time you have a reference for, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't do that one quite right, and therefore this happened. And so then
right.
you know to pay more attention to that particular aspect of it. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it's been fun. I haven't watched you. It's just we've been talking about it as you made your way through, and then being able to talk with Celeste was a real plus.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
that was great. Yeah. Get a little bit of the history and just talk about the, needlework as art, and it wasn't just talk about the class. So that's why I think it was really excellent.
Right. Yeah, she was great. Yeah. So people are going to get really sick and tired of me talking about my stockings, but I'm down to
finish.
Well, I'm down. I keep saying, all right, I'm going to be done, and I keep thinking I'm going to be done, but then life gets in the way all the time. So, so I'm more than 2/3 done with the last stocking. I'm down to the little pieces at the bottom, little vignette things. So it should go faster. But the highlight for me in just a few days ago was that I got the Cooper, or the first one I did, came back from Vonna, the Twisted Stitcher, who finished it, and she put up a picture before she shipped it.
It was stunning.
Yeah, you could just tell it was just. And then I thought, okay, I can't wait to see the real deal. Yeah, it's spot on. It's spot on at every corner. Everything is just perfect. It's beautiful. A nice lining. She used a light colored lining, so you could actually see into the sock.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah, and because I had suggested for the backing and for the cording around the outside colors that would match the. So like I picked, there was a dark blue, and so I gave her the DMC number for that, and then there was a dark maroon red, and gave her the DMC number for that. And there's limitations to how close she can come, but I didn't even compare them because it looked like she nailed it right on the button. She wouldn't found the fabric. But so I just told her that, and she went and got fabric, and she made that thing and shipped it back. And boy, I could not be happier with the result. It is spot on all the way around. And boy, if you're wanting finishing done, Vonna is definitely somebody should be the top of your list because she really did a beautiful job. It's just gorgeous. And the other one will get done, and I'm going to ship it off to her right away. But she mentioned the other day that she's about done for the year, which I'm sure there's those finishers. There's a limit to how much you can stand to do in a year. So I'll ship it to her so that we have it for next Christmas. And
Well, and, because everybody at this time of year is stitching up all their Christmas stuff because they
right,
want to get it on the tree. But
right,
then that means the poor finisher has to, the week before
yes,
Christmas is just, going like gangbusters to try to,
yeah,
yeah. So you have to limit what you're willing to do.
yeah. I think if I were a finisher, I think I'd be tempted to say everything I can do up till Thanksgiving, and then that's it.
Right. No
Yeah,
guarantee of time
right.
after that.
Yep.
Time to finish.
Yeah, like I may not feel like it, so it's going to be January, so deal with it. Yeah, yeah, but just spot on. Gotta say, just absolutely perfect. Shipped back all wrapped in bubble wrap, all protected. Showed up on a rainy day. Fortunately, the mail guy didn't just flip it on the porch in the rain. Put it underneath something, but just perfect all the way around. Really gorgeous, and I was really pleased because, of course, I'm really careful about carrying threads, and but that's just my nature. But I didn't really give it any thought in terms of what she lined the stocking with.
Mm-hmm.
And she lined it with like a cream colored cloth. And if I had carried any threads at all on that, it's a fairly loose weave linen, 26 or 8, something like that.
Yeah.
Those carryovers would have shown all the way around, and she
Right.
would have had to go with a darker liner or something. So I was really pleased, and then actually had a couple where I had carried across one opening, just like one hole opening on Connor's stocking, and I went back and fixed those just so that I knew that they wouldn't show because I can't help it.
Of course you did.
But I went back and redid them. But yeah, it's just beautifully done all the way around. Couldn't be more proud of it. Really looks great. Really excited. We'll see our daughter and son-in-law and young Cooper for Thanksgiving, and I can't wait to get there and give it to them because
That's
really
great.
really neat. And then just saw it before we started recording on Sampler World. Melanie Poe Rayner posted 3. I did not know these existed. 3 Mary Beale, MaryBeale, MaryBeale.com, sampler stockings. And so we were looking for, we started, I'd never heard of this. We were looking before we started recording.
We got started late because the two of us did a whole looky-loo thing and just go, ooh, oh, that's really beautiful. Yeah, they're really neat. So they're done in a sampler style. So you have, verbiage and it kind of looks like a sampler in the shape of a stocking. I don't know any other way to put it. That's pretty much what it is. But it works really, really well. And I think I like them a lot. They may be some of my favorite stockings that I've seen done. Just the style, the colors, everything that's written is, Christmas sort of themed, related.
Yep.
It's really, those are really cool.
Yeah,
So
they're really nice. Charts are $7 a piece, so can't beat that. And then
Nope.
And then we started. There's a whole bunch of ornaments on there too, and sampler type ornament. It's like that's a dangerous site right there.
We got started a lot late because we had we had to dig through that whole thing.
Yeah. The sign on, record, and be done.
Didn't happen this
that didn't
time.
happen. No, not the first time, but so Mary Beale, Beale, MaryBeale.com. Boy, check that out. Those stockings, they're
Beautiful.
Yep. I don't know how big they are, but I don't care. They're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, just nice to have something a little different.
Yep. Oh, and then Sassy Jacks, the Hands Across the Sea sampler, the Uffendell limited edition. They still have a few because Nicola's completely sold out, has been for weeks.
Yes.
They still have a few. I don't know if they still have some at the attic, but if you're wanting one, there's still some to be had. But I got to believe you need to hurry. And then you were,
I would think.
You said you were getting kitted up to do that. That's that's up on high on the list, is it?
High on the list is a big question because I'm working on this one piece, and after that, I think I need to finish a couple of things before I jump into that. Just because then we have to be somewhat reasonable about how many pieces I can work on at a time. But I like to have one piece going that's a portable piece. and then another, at least, have other pieces that are not so portable. What I'm learning is, okay, what things can you stitch on a plane? And that's basically anything that's really small that's not going to require you to bunk your elbows into somebody else. What things can you stitch in a car? So that's nothing that is going to require any kind of needle precision. So like surface embroidery, definitely not. Needlepoint on something that's got a pretty large canvas is fair game. But you have to be able to, especially if you're working on charted work, you have to take that into account, because now, especially if you get car sick, I get a little car sick sometimes. So, you have to, so I've done that. I've needle pointed in the car. I'm going away this weekend, so it might be a long drive because of traffic. So I'm definitely going to bring, that one charted piece. So it's a charted needlepoint piece on like I said, loose weave canvas. So, bouncing cars don't affect it too much. So that's my long car drive piece.
Yeah, going to the grocery store in your area is a long car drive. So yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It is.
Yeah. If only I could figure out how to stitch on my commute to work, that would be great. Cause it's anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half each way every day.
Ooh, think what you could get done. Holy
I
smokes.
know.
Yeah.
If I was like, commuting into New York City and taking the train, that would be a whole other thing.
You need a driver. I think we need to get you a driver.
A driver? Yeah. Well, somebody gets me a housekeeper first. I would appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather a housekeeper than a driver.
Priorities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when the lottery winnings come in, it's going to be housekeeper first.
Okay, all right. She started her list. She started the list, folks.
Yeah.
Yep. Barbara Ruckett, Needlepoint Nation. This was a couple weeks ago. I noted this one that she says someone in another group mentioned that she wishes she had photographed her needlepoint before donating them when downsizing. And that then she and her husband went through and took pictures of everything in their house that they'd stitched over the years. And she said that didn't include the ones they'd given away. And she really got me thinking about that, because you finish these things and some people give them away, and I'm not so inclined to do that. But to have a photographic record anymore would be pretty smart to have. I mean, because we talked about that for insurance purposes, but just to be able to have a record of what you stitched, and just to keep it, and I guess to show people. But then I was thinking also to have a record, so like if you go in and you have a favorite designer and you go to buy a chart, it'd be nice to know, did I already do that one or not? Because after a while you can forget. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So okay, this is a fact that you don't know about me, despite the fact that we've known each other for so long. There was a time in my much younger days where I used to build doll houses, so miniatures. So kind of like,
that is so cool to do. That is so cool to do. Oh.
You and I have talked about that because your dad does model trains, and my dad did model trains also. So when you think about doll houses, you think about little kid doll houses and pretty, kind of standard run-of-the-mill type things. And I was obsessed because my grandfather made me a dollhouse when I was very small. And again, it was very simple. It was box rooms, box furniture, and both my grandparents made things all the time. That's how, they built their house. So this is where I think I get this need to make things all the time from. For some time, and I imagine it's probably still true, I haven't really looked into it. There's all kinds of miniatures, doll houses for adults. And these are definitely adult level of complexity, because you would build the house, and the house could have 9 rooms in it or something. And I was building, giant Victorians and Queen Anne's and things like that. And then you wallpaper, you cut molding. So I'd do crown molding. I would do a laid floor, like a wood floor. All of them were wired, so they all had, functioning electrical in there. So you could turn lamps on and off, and ceiling chandeliers on and off.
Can't do it low key, can you?
No. So those, I actually did take pictures of a few things because, I was making them for a shop actually. So, I had to give them back.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had, a few that I did myself that, and some were from kits where, you're working with larger pieces, and then others you're building from, I mean, if you were doing shingles, you would do all the shingles, or if you were doing siding, you would do layer after layer of siding. So they were pretty labor intensive, and all the wood you would have to cut. So I had a tiny, tiny little miter saw to do the moldings and things like that, because I was very much like you are with needlepoint, where everything had to be perfect. So the one thing that I did do was you could needlepoint rugs because the scale is perfect.
Right.
So a really tight, a tight linen weave, you could get like almost like a Persian rug doing it that way, and then fringe the edges and stuff like that. So anyway, the whole point of this was I did take pictures of those, and those I can look back on. And sometimes I look back and think, wow, you were really crazy. And then other times I look back and say, wow, that's pretty cool that you actually did that. So yeah, I think it's good. And it also goes back to what we were talking about before, where you have a record of your progress, where you can look at the pieces that you did when you were a beginner, and then, and especially because those, once you become, a pretty experienced stitcher, you probably don't have your beginning pieces displayed anywhere, because you've done, 12 much more beautiful, perfect pieces. So it's nice to be able to look at them and say, all right, that's where I started.
Yeah.
I kind of like that idea. I would almost want to print them and put them in like a book, like a binder or something, so that every once in a while you could just kind of flip through and look at sort of your progression over time.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. And learn from it.
Yeah.
Well, you really got me going here. 'Cause see, I made a dollhouse for Sarah when she was a little girl for Christmas out of a kit. And I have to say, I was making it in secret at night down in the basement, because this was in the Santa Claus days.
And they take forever.
And they took, that was the other part. I did not realize how long it was going to take. And so there were a lot of late nights to get that done by Christmas. And, but I have to say, I enjoyed doing it, and almost went and got another one, because there was a dollhouse shop in the town next. And I thought, oh, I could go, and that's just it, light it and everything else. And I thought, wait a minute. And we lived in a small house at the time. I thought, no, I'm not, because then where do we put it? And then it's just going to sit in the basement. But I really enjoyed that. And then you got me. There's a lady I follow on my Feedly news feed who designs a dollhouse needlepoint designs and kits.
That
and I was
makes
trying
perfect sense.
It's like Gardner or something like that is her name. I'll find it and have it. But she does some really neat stuff, and she does a lot of dollhouses. And you reminded me of her, and she doesn't post that often, but she really does some rugs and little things to hang on walls, and
like tapestries, they're kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a neat little aspect. A lot of petty point work, and it's cool. That's a hobby. I have to say, I came real close to dipping into, because and what intrigued me is my dad does trains, and it must be the genes, I don't know, but he builds trains, and has half of his basement is a layout. But what he really enjoys, and what he's really good at, is the scenery.
Yes, the landscape. And so these dollhouses are not kid dollhouses. They are definitely, it's the same exact. In fact, I used to go to model train shops often for supplies and tools.
Little slats of wood and stuff, you bet.
Slats of wood, bits of copper to be able to do like copper rain spouts and gutters and things like that. That was all from train shops. And train shops, had, because especially trains, models, things like that, they age things. So a house, when you think about it, a dollhouse, if you paint it a color, it's going to look that color and it looks new. But a real house is going to be aged a little on the outside. So you would go to the model train shop, and they have special kits that you can get for aging metal or aging wood. I would often just dry brush over it, especially in corners and things to give it sort of a weathered appearance.
Right. Right.
But yeah, this is definitely miniatures world. I wouldn't even call it doll houses. It's miniatures.
Yeah.
Well, that's what that was super fun.
That's what my dad's favorite thing is to buy kits of buildings for trains. They're all HO gauge, but he doesn't. He buys the ones that are just a box full of the wood slats, and then you build
most
it. Yeah.
Fun way.
And then he does that. You're exactly right. He does that. He weathers them. Gets like where water would run off the gutters or off of metal. Exactly. He stains the siding and all those little things that. And then when he puts it in his layout, then it fits right in. It looks perfect. Yep.
Right. It doesn't look cartoony anymore. It actually looks real. Yeah. So that was really fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's dangerous stuff. Yep. Because my dad does. I saw him one time. He had a friend over, and I just happened to be visiting, and the friend was wanting help with scenery because people struggle with that, and and he couldn't make this guy couldn't make trees. He couldn't get trees to make look good. And Dad went out. He says, "Just a minute." He goes outside and he comes back in with a little fistful of twigs, just stuff he picked up on the yard, and it wasn't 15 minutes, and he had like half a dozen trees that. It's just, how do you do that? But he just has a vision, or he just has he can see it, and so he just took a little twig that fell off a tree and put some of that fuzzy stuff on it here and there, and with a little spot of glue, and he had a tree, and he put it in his layout, and by golly, that was a tree. And, that's dangerous. Yeah,
I know all of these maker hobbies.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something I don't know what it is about that. There's a little bit of that need to do something perfectly, to create that verisimilitude. It's definitely that perfectionist idea because it's easy. That's another thing. It's easy to do, a pretty poor one because it's sloppy and you can immediately look at the photos and you know that it's a model.
Yeah.
But if you can build it so that when somebody takes a picture, you can't tell that it's a model, that it's, scaled.
Yep.
That's when you get to the point where you've really become a master. So.
Yeah, well, and I love photographing my dad's layout for that very reason because it's believable. It's believable, and of course he runs a lot of steam engines, and a lot of those are weathered, and a lot of the cars are weathered, or stained, and sometimes they'll have graffiti on them, any number of things.
Sure.
But when I do photos, if I get the lighting right, it's pretty believable. It really is, and that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun.
So, yep.
So for those who don't have enough hobbies.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And that it takes up a lot of space. That's the other thing.
Yes.
That I had a little basement in my house, and the whole basement was basically the house itself, and you need room around it to be able to work, but then all the tools and the supplies, and you think you have a stash for needlework. That's nothing compared to what you build. I mean, I still have like my little files and things so that you could carve wood and all just crazy things.
It's like anything, you can just go nuts.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. I really liked it. Then I had a kid. I think that was what finally killed it.
That'll do it.
I made a miniature something else.
Yeah. Yep. But they grow up and then time frees up again. So,
they do. They do.
So I was thinking the other day, actually it was, I remember precisely when it was. It was the last time Mary Corbett, with one T, wrote about cleaning up her workspace. And I realized that I needed to clean up my workspace. Because I had my big table, I had a little open area right where I sit, and that was the only part that was free of stuff. And it was when I was putting that stocking on the scroll bars, and I couldn't lay them on the table because there was no room. Okay, all right, I got to get this together. So I cleaned it all up, and then I got to thinking, how do I, what is it that makes me acquire all this stuff? And I have a fraction of what most people have for stash. What makes it makes me buy this stuff? Why do I keep accumulating stuff when I don't have projects finished? I'm not sitting there going,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I need to go buy a project because I don't have anything." Really, I'm so that ain't happening. I'm way
Right.
down
You've
that
got
road.
things.
And so I just started making a list. And how is it the stash builds up?
Yes.
What is it that makes you acquire stuff, and there's no way you're going to start stitching it tomorrow. It's just not going to happen.
No,
Yeah.
no. Well, okay, we'll have to talk about, so with needlepoint and embroidery, what builds a stash. I could tell you from quilting, my quilting days, because I guess I've done everything. Well, I haven't done everything, but I've done a lot of things. Somebody at work the other day said, "Christine, you have so many hobbies," and I realized that this is not normal for most people.
No,
Like they go
no.
home and do, I have stations around the house of things that I'm doing. So yeah, I do have a lot of hobbies. Anyway, quilting, you go into a fabric store and very rarely, like for needlepoint, I kit something. Okay, I have the chart and then I'm ready to do the project. So I get the fabric, the threads, all the things that I need to do, and I set that up and put it aside and either start it or put it off for a little while. For quilting, it was different because you never knew what you were going to find in a fabric store. So, with needlepoint, you're specifying a specific color or something like that. Unless you're doing design work or I guess painted canvas maybe is a little bit different because you're picking threads. Quilting, you never know. So you see a pretty piece of fabric and you say, "Ooh, that's beautiful. I can use that someday." And so you buy a fat quarter or, maybe a little bit more depending on what it is. And then before you know it, you have racks and racks of fabric. So, and
With
my
no
grandmother,
specific plan attached to it. You just
no,
acquire it.
no,
Okay.
just really beautiful. You see a beautiful piece of fabric and you say, "Oh, I may not see that again. Let me, because it's not that much to buy a quarter of a yard. And for a lot of quilting, that's, all you need. So you just buy a little piece and then that's what you have. Or you do a project and you have leftover fabric and then you don't want to throw it away because it's still good and you could use it for something. And then before you know it, you have a giant stash and bins of fabric. All of the women in my mom and my grandmother, they just had bins and bins by the time they were done because it's all fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You never know. It might be the perfect fabric for something that you're going to do down the road. So you do get a little hoardery, or at least my family did. So every once in a while I will destash and just go through all that stuff and because then it starts getting crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right. So needlepoint then. How
Well,
do you end up with stuff?
Well, the left over from projects is certainly
Yeah.
one way. I mean, that's certainly one way you build up a lot of stuff. If you do a lot of projects, you do that. And then now I have 4 or 5 projects that I've kitted up.
Mm-hmm. So you're ready to roll.
They're ready to go, and I have a drawer where all the threads are stored in bags, with a label. This is it, and then I have the canvas is stored, it rolled up, stored away, and it's labeled, or the label with the threads says you still have to buy the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have that. But then I have lots of drawers with it's just leftover thread and a lot of it. And then when we've had a couple of instances at our guild where someone has passed on and left their entire stash, and
Yes.
then it comes to the guild, and then we have a night where everybody can take whatever you want, and then you cut a check for whatever you feel like to the memorial fund, and that's really good for the guild because we build up a nice memorial fund that helps us do things, helps us have teachers and so on and so forth, all out of this stash. And of course, then like I have enough number 5 pearl ecru for you, me, and 3 others because there was
Right.
there was a box of it, and I thought I'll use that. sooner or later I'll use all of it. And so, and like all that stuff, it doesn't rot. It doesn't go away.
No,
And
no.
I wasn't going to leave it. I mean, nobody seemed to want it. So I took it. And now the last thing I'll ever buy again is Ecru number 5 pearl.
Right. Well, and that's another way that you build up a stash is, so let's say you're kitting up a project and I have to buy, like the number 5 Ecru. Okay, well, that's something that I'll probably use again and it's on sale. So instead of buying one, I'll buy 2.
Yep.
And I know that I'll use it, except that maybe you won't use it or you forget that you have it. So that's one way. So I've been really careful with threads to store them in a hyper organized way, so that if I do have to kit something before I go to the shopping cart, I go to my catalog and look at what I have. And I know that we've talked about there's apps to do that.
Right.
I don't have the apps. I just have my drawer of threads. But I could see putting it in an app now because it's getting to a point where that would actually be useful to do.
Yeah. Now, see, I have all my DMCs, just regular stranded floss in an app, so I can go to the store and know exactly what I have and what I don't have, and I keep that right up to snuff. But all the rest of it, I do not have. And usually, if I'm kitting something up, I'll take an hour, and because it's organized in drawers reasonably well. Like all the number 5s are there together, so I can pull them out, lay them out on the table, and it's reasonably. But I'll spend an hour if I'm going to kit something up. I'll spend an hour and I'll go through and say, all right, I have these threads, I have sufficient of these, so I only have to buy these. But I have to say there have been other times where I've just said, skip it. I'm gonna go to the store. I'm just gonna get all of them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a and then I'll come back and then I'll realize I had 3 or 4 of them. And okay, well, I'll use that stuff another time.
Yeah.
But it's and then the other part. This is, I don't know if other people do this, but I have a nasty habit. If I go in a store, I feel like I should. If I just go in and look around, I feel like I should buy something. Mm-hmm. So I have a nice little collection of charts that probably will never get stitched, but I felt like I should. I really liked it. I hadn't seen it anywhere else. It was $15. Okay,
right.
I'll put $15 in the till, and I'll take this chart, and I really like it, and I might or might not do it. Who knows? But yeah, I have those, and then those Mary Beale stockings at $7 a piece. I got to say, there's 3 or 4 of them there. I'm tempted to spend $30 just to have them, just because. They're and it's really kind of dumb. But then on the other hand, maybe those Mary Beals aren't available in a couple of years, and I really wish I had one. So
and
I think
that's such a hoarder mentality. That's what I was saying. Well, it's still good. It's these 2 phrases. I may never see it again, so I have to get it now, and it's still good, so there's no reason to throw it away. Those are the 2 things. You couple those 2 things together, and you are right online for Hoarder Town.
And now, how many years of therapy that took you to learn this?
Yeah, I don't know. So, because I grew up with parents who, were like us. So, yeah, there was there were stashes of lots of different hobby type things around the house. So, in fact, my sisters and I will joke that for a while that show Hoarders was on TV.
Yeah.
And we would watch that, and because it was the greatest thing ever, because they go to commercial break and you'd literally walk around the house and say, all right, what can I throw away? What can I get rid of? Because you start thinking, oh my God, that's going to happen to me.
Yep.
So yeah. I think the way to the defense against it is organization. So that you don't keep rebuying things. I think that's key. But your weakness is charts. And maybe the thing is that you like just having the charts. You'd like being able to look at them. For you, that's potential.
Yeah.
That's something that can be done in the future. And that's a really attractive and that's a nice feeling to have when you purchase a chart, because it's not a thread or something. Even those things, it's something, ooh, this could be a real thing someday. So it's that potential energy kind of feeling that drives it for you. So your thing is charts. Mine is books. If I see,
Yeah.
and I have to, this is where I have to really sort of restrain myself. If I see a good book that's about techniques or history, or even, I saw, so this is where it gets crazy. I saw somebody had done a blackwork piece of a brass rubbing from a gravestone, right? So, and it was a giant piece. It was probably 3 feet tall.
Back up the truck. A blackwork piece of a rubbing.
Yes. So you know how they do brass rubbings,
right?
Or like gravestone rubbings.
Yes.
You can go to okay. So this was a rubbing of a brass, I guess a brass lifted piece. It was like a medieval brass thing. So you go with paper and you do the crayon or the pencil over that to get the image of it onto paper. So what this woman had done is she had transferred that paper into a fabric piece and had done it in blackwork, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
How creative is that? Wow.
Right? It was the coolest idea. So then immediately I'm on Amazon.com looking for books on brass rubbings, because then, there has to be some kind of a book that has just, page after page of images.
Sure.
And then, before you know it, it's 20 minutes later and I've got 3 books in my shopping cart of things that could be potential. And I have to say, all right, step back for a second, crazy person. And that's where, are you actually going to do this? So then I put them in a list, I stow them away in my wish list of things so that in the event, because I don't want to forget the idea, because it was such a cool idea.
Right.
And to own that, to make it and then own it would have been awesome.
Yeah.
So those books for me are their potential, their ideas of things, and I have like Indian fabric things, like books of things that look like cool ideas if they were translated into embroidery or needlework. So, tapestries, stained glass windows, like weird things like that.
Yeah.
So if I had, infinite disposable income, I would be living in a library probably. Because that is my weakness, because each of those is potential.
Yep.
For me.
Now, see, I do that. One of the great technological gains in our lifetime is cell phone cameras.
Yes.
That just to always have in your pocket, because I'm a photographer. I mean, I have no problem carrying cameras around, but to always have, in these days, I just got a new 8S, the large size iPhone 8, which has a superb camera in it. And to have that kind of quality in your pocket for use at any time is what a plus, especially for this kind of stuff, to document whatever. But I do that with my cell phone camera in my travels. If I'm in a hotel and I see a piece of artwork or some kind of an interior treatment that I immediately see could become a design, I'll get pictures of that. I have lots and lots of photos of things that could become needlepoint design or needlework of any kind design.
Right.
Not unlike rubbing, brass. But that's a great idea. You can just see it.
It was total, and it just lent itself to the blackwork. I mean, it was just a stunning thing to do. And I don't even remember where I saw it. It might have been in a newsletter. But so the thing is, though, with all these photos, it's really easy to do that. But unless you sort your photos, so that's one thing is I will sort my photos into something meaningful in my phone gallery, because otherwise you end up with, I know I took a picture of something somewhere and then you can't find it, or you just completely forget that you ever took a photo of it because it's not part of your, like I have my needlework folder. So every once in a while, if I'm sitting somewhere and I'm bored, I'll go through and sort the images into that, because otherwise, they get lost. But then when you are bored or when you need an idea or something, then you just open up that folder and all of it is just potential. So then you can look through and see what you could do.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and
it's good to take those.
Yeah, it isn't just design too. It could be color combinations that you don't
Yes,
think
absolutely.
of. Yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
some artist, wow, that worked, and you could just borrow that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, how stash builds up. Another one that I had written down is that you buy it, but because you figure you can always do, you'll always have more time in the future, or you'll get faster at it. And so, you know what I mean? So, like, okay,
Yes.
if you're going to retire in 5 years, I'm going to buy some stuff now because I'm going to have all kinds of time to stitch when I retire. And how many retired people will tell you, I don't have any time. I'm retired and I got so many things I'm doing. I don't have any time. Um,
Right.
but you think, all right, I'm going to store up like a squirrel storing nuts for the winter. I'm going to store up needlework because when
Well,
I
but
retire,
yeah, how do you know your taste is going to be the same?
right.
How do you know that, 5 years from now that's going to be appealing to you in any way?
Yeah.
You don't really know, because I've done that with other types of projects too, and you look at them and you're like, what was I thinking? I don't like that at all now.
Yep. Yeah. So that was another one that had hit me. All right. Yeah. I'm building for the future. I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see, what else did I put down? Oh yeah. I've done this here where you use projects as a diversion. So you're in the middle of a big project. Oh, I'm just going to buy this little one just because this will be a nice diversion. I'll knock this out in a
Yes.
couple weeks and then I'll get back to the main one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right. You will. Sure.
Yeah, right, because then you get distracted,
Right.
we're like crows with shiny things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. That's going to happen. Yep. But I do think there is merit in having working two levels of needlework at once.
Yes,
A complex
definitely.
one and a mindless one. We've talked about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
But
and like I said before, something that travels well and
yep.
something that doesn't. Like we were talking about the Uffendale samplers, those are not traveling pieces. So
No.
those are
No.
not going to be something, if I'm at a friend's house or something that I'm going to be able to take with me. So I have my going to a friend's house piece, which is my Jacobean crewel work
Yep.
one, because that's something you can do easy while you're talking to somebody else, and it doesn't require too much, like with as far as magnification and lighting and everything, because
Right.
it's so big. So it's different pieces for different
Yep.
environments.
At some point, it's just fun to go shopping and come home with some stuff.
There's also that.
It's just fun to just do that. Come home
Yeah.
and lay out your threads on the table. And I bought this piece of canvas because it was a neat color. And here's a chart I got, and just kind of sit there and look at it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and so one of the dangers, we were talking earlier before we started recording about magazines, and there's so many good magazines like Needlepoint Now and Inspirations, and they have projects in them. And so very easily you can see how you would do this has a project in it that I really like, so I'm going to save it.
yep,
And then before you know it, you've got, 60 issues of magazines, and you don't remember where those are, and you don't have them cataloged. And, so again, you accumulate things, but then you don't even realize you have them.
hmm yeah. I know lots of people who have, for instance, every copy of Needlepoint Now.
Right.
Yeah, but
Which is fine,
yeah,
But then if you can't remember where something was, or it's not even so much that you don't remember where it is. You forget it exists because something else shiny comes along that you want to do even more.
right. Yeah, that's one of my rainy day projects, other than stitching, is to take my magazines and cut them apart and save the projects that I truly like and want to
Yes.
do and put those in
Mm-hmm.
sleeves in a binder and then
Yep.
throw the magazines away and get it down to what I really care about and then get rid of the
Yeah.
rest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you take, for instance, Needlepoint Now. I mean, for any given person, however, say they have 6 projects in an issue. For any given person, I would venture there's no more than 1 or 2 that you really would do.
Right. Right.
That
Or I have an even better idea. If you don't want to do it that way, I would scan them.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
because then your storage is even less. You don't even have to do a binder. Although being a book person, for me, we talk about the digital versus the actual magazine version, the printed version. I love having the books because I love just picking up a book. In fact, I did it yesterday. I was just picking up a book because I was thinking about different projects, and it's nice to just flip through the pages and see what's there. So I definitely tend towards the printed thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt, because that's like sometimes when I'm tired and I just don't want to stitch, and I know if I start stitching I'll make mistakes and just get mad. Then
Yes, yeah.
to sit down with a needlepoint book in the recliner, put my feet up, and just kind of just mindlessly go through it and look at the different projects or the different techniques, and you nod off and fall asleep. So what, but that's fun to do. And if you have good books, matter of fact, I have to admit I was doing that with my Yvette Stanton Old World Hardanger book the other day. Just going through and, oh man, look at that. Look how she did that. How'd she pull that off? And then you go and watch look at the instructions and that's an aspect of the hobby that's just fun, and you don't have to worry about whether you laid the threads right or not. So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, and why do we, what's one of the reasons we do this? Because we make beautiful things.
Right.
So how nice is it to just sit and actually take the time to look at and appreciate beautiful things that somebody else made?
Yep. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and Yvette makes beautiful things, so I enjoyed that.
She does.
She does. All right, there we go. We're going to have to call this one Sunday, Jessica Grimm.
Yes. That
Jessica
was fun.
Grimm from Bavaria. What a great conversation. I say it every time, don't I, that it was a great conversation.
We do. But I think we get better and better as we go along, yes, our memories are short, and everyone seems like that was the best ever.
But we really enjoy them. I mean, these people, everybody we have, they're really great.
It's not genuine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People
it is.
Really
and
great.
Each one has brings a different thing.
Yep.
So they are all great.
Yeah.
And it's the guests that make it great. It's not that, I'm not saying that we necessarily are great.
No.
But each guest has something different to say and a different perspective or different school of thought. So they're all different and they're all equally good.
Yep. So that'll be Sunday, Jessica Grimm. We're calling it right here. That's it.
We are.
That's it. Yep.
Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for listening.